and crafting solutions. The rare combination of his life experiences has given him authority to make the recommendations he does in his books to help Black America become self-sufficient and competitive. And he has devoted his life to doing just that. The Powernomics Corporation of America includes this brief bio in a Black history reader so that readers, current and future, will have a way to validate his authority to make the recommendations he does to help Black America become self-sufficient and competitive. It is this background and his independent research that is the basis and foundation from which he has written 5 books and developed the strategies he offers to Black America. Author of 4 books that have been national bestsellers for more than 20 years, his books are ranked bestsellers by Amazon. He is the president of Powernomics Corporation of America, the company that publishes his books. And he is a Black history reader. A Black history reader. His 5th book was released in September 2017 to wide acclaim and strong sales. So without further ado, if we could all stand, please, and welcome Dr. Claud Anderson to the stage.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for that much appreciated applause and that introduction. And let me say good evening to you both individually and collectively. And again, I deeply appreciate you all inviting me to be here to be your keynote speaker. And in many ways, it symbolizes, and it's ironic that it indicates my beginning in fighting for Black folk. Right here in California. When I first came here back as a young man and got stationed out at El Toro, California Marine Air Base. And one of my primary responsibilities was teaching and preparing my pilots how to survive in combat and on desert islands, crash landings, everything, and even in prisoners of war. And I always felt that compassion. Later on, I wound up getting 6 college degrees to follow up on that. And what I did then, the first thing I did was try education. That's why you all mean a lot to me as students here, the Black Student Union. Because after I got my degrees in education, first thing I did, I started teaching schools, from the elementary schools through high schools. They even gave me a school with 900 of the worst thugs and hoods in the city of Detroit, and told me, say, do something with them. And I functioned in administrative capacity as a principal, assistant principal there. For a number of years, the students all came out so well pretty soon. After I got through with them, they didn't want to leave, go back to regular schools anymore. I also taught at all levels in community colleges and different universities. But one of my biggest responsibilities was getting appointed to be the first Black to ever be over the entire state's education system for the state of Florida. At which meant I was over everything from the first grade, the nursery school, to the graduate schools in both the private sector and the public sector. And I thank you for that. And as a result of that, I learned something. I learned that a lot of things that my people should be knowing, that our school system and the institution was totally incapable of doing it. They didn't have the expertise, they didn't have the skills, they didn't have the freedom to be able to prepare our people and our young people how to survive and compete in this society. That came from my experience. Later on, when I ran campaigns for presidents, campaign manager for Jimmy Carter, deputy strategist for Bill Clinton in Maryland. I was the only Black that ever was a manager for campaigns for presidents, and then for governors, and then for attorney generals, then for mayors, then for city council members, and also for people going for Congress. No other Blacks have had that experience. I was the first Black to be assistant secretary in Commerce. All that's what you're going to hear tonight. I was the only Black that ever sat as a chairman for economic development for governors. I was the first also the Black to set over minority banking programs. And also when I set up Miami Capital, Miami Citywide, I put 57 Black into business in 2 years in the city of Miami. So what I'm going to be saying to you today might hurt your feelings, but I'm going to disappoint a lot of you. I'm going to talk about a lot of things that you don't want to hear. I'm going to talk about everybody that you think and hold sacred. So get prepared. That doesn't mean I hate anybody. It means I'm sick and tired at my age of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of hearing Black folks majoring in the Miami. The BSing days are over. They're over. I came here tonight sick. When I got on the plane yesterday in Detroit, Michigan, but in Washington, D.C., I was sick. That's why my son is with me. I didn't feel well. I said, I'm going to Long Beach, even sick. I don't feel that well. But I'm coming here because I'm halfway curse half of you out. You get upset, tough. You're going to hear from it tonight. And you're going to learn something. And I'm going to see one thing I don't do. I do not major in the minors. I don't dig in the minutiae. I don't mess with symbolic, ceremonial issues. I stay away from all that stuff. I do not indulge in horizontal issues. Horizontal issues mean anything that applies to anybody around the world. I don't care. I don't get engaged in it. I'm only dealing with vertical issues. And vertical is why? Because, you see, racism is a vertical issue. Everything on earth that's of importance is vertically ordered. Please understand that and quit playing the games. Everything of importance is vertically aligned. If you start talking about topography on the earth, it goes from the high, from the mountains to the valleys low. If you talk about religion, it's going to go from God up high to the devil below. If you talk about economics, it's going to go from the rich to the trickle down at the bottom. Everything's about vertical. Quit getting engaged in all these symbolic issues. Now, what I mean by vertical, by horizontal means anything that applies to everybody. And anybody around the world is engaging in it. Don't waste your time if you don't have to. If you do engage in it, please learn how to prioritize your self-interest. Put your self-interest and your people's interest above anything else that's horizontal. Now, what I mean by horizontal, gender is a horizontal issue. You got people of different genders all around the world. Why in the world would you be getting involved in gender issues? That has nothing to do with black people. But, well, Dr. Ellis, how about politics? You got politics with Democratic Party, Republican Party. Those are horizontal issues. You got political parties all around the world. Well, what about, let's see, how about religion? Religion is a horizontal issue. I got religious groups all around the world, any kind you can think of. Those are horizontal issues. And so no, the issues are vertical. Anything that's horizontal is this way. If somebody puts you in something horizontal, like a ditch, and it runs around the world, you can walk around that ditch until hell comes to heaven. It doesn't make any difference. You'll never get out of a ditch. Only way you can get out of a ditch is to go vertical. You hear people talking about bouncing your money, that the gentleman has talked about. When you bounce your money, the ball does not bounce horizontally, it bounces up. Everything is vertical. So the days I get into it again, I'm glad you asked me to come out here. You asked me to talk about We Rise. And my question brought back, we rise from what? What are you talking about? We rise, what the hell is that? Start to get specific and come, so homie, don't play that. You better tell me what the hell you're rising from. And you see right now, as I said, in most of these institutions that you're going to, they're not prepared. They can't tell you what you're rising from. Because they're under public policy of political correctness. They can't talk about black issues. All they're going to do is give you the fake news about social integration and corrupted civil rights. And so you stay out of those issues, but we're going to get into some stuff pretty soon. Now, right now, somebody said, well, Dr. Anderson, we got to have a Q&A. No, I don't want the Q&A. When I get through with your readings now, I do not want any Q&A. Because everything I'm going to say to you, I've already said to you in 60 years of best-selling books in this country around the world. My last book was out on the stand right now called The Black History Reader. 101 questions you never thought to ask. So don't ask me about, well, Dr. You're going to take some questions. Hell, what are you going to ask me now? I don't know what I know. And you should be knowing. You read the books. Start off right now, but I haven't got into my lecture yet now. Please prove that Malcolm X was wrong. But he says, if you want to keep something a secret, put it in a book, a black person never find it. Yeah. I disagree. My people will read if you give them the proper motivation and incentive to do it. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm going to talk about what we need to do in our society. And we're going to start off by saying this, that if you want, what you need to hear tonight is the truth. You're entitled to the truth. And you've never heard the truth the way I'm going to give it to you tonight. And so you can take notes, anything you want, but you've never heard the truth, but you deserve it. And you're going to get it. And we're going to talk about it in a way that I'm going to be going about 200 miles an hour talking to you. And so when you say rise up, you better don't rise up and walk, you better rise up and run to keep up with me. Because we're going to be talking about the issues now. And the first thing we're going to talk about is what's going on in politics. And if you stay engaged in the ceremonies, you never know. What does Donald Trump mean when he says, making America great again? You don't know, because nobody teaches you what he means when he says that. What does it mean right now, before I get into my lecture? When I hear reading the paper about Harvard University, the Asians are demanding that they eliminate racial mission quotas from Harvard University. The same thing that the Jews did in 1968. Get rid of anything to race. What does that mean? What does that mean when you have a major campaign, mid-elections, and not one black elected official, not one black civil rights leader, not one major minister stood up and say, what about black people and their impact? When they start talking about immigration, the DACA Act, where are the blacks in this country that says they understand Newton's third law of motion, which says for every action there must be an equal and reverse action. If you're going to bring in 30 or 40 million immigrants, they cannot come in without creating a negative. I have yet to ever hear anybody since in the last century say for every immigrant who comes to the country, it's going to hurt somebody, and it's hurting black people. That is illegal and unconstitutional, and I'm going to talk about that. But you don't stand up and fight for it. You don't push back. And the few blacks I've heard in all the years I've traveled around the world, heading up trade missions in the Caribbean, trade missions all through Venezuela, Colombia, Latin America, Caribbean, heading trade missions into Europe, trade missions into Africa. I'm going to get on you about all those. And I agree with the gentleman that you are the original people. But I'm going to ask you one thing that differs from that when I get to that point. And that's going to be about your blackness. Because that has a different definition. I always want you to understand that you're the original people. And you're entitled to be respected and appreciated. But there's a way of beating this system. We're going to get to that. So now we're going to talk about race. And once you understand these issues, as we go through them, you'll be in a much stronger position to be able to fight and defend yourself. And you'll be able to empower yourselves economically. The first thing is understand the biggest thing that's got you locked in box. That is a social construct. A social construct that was put in place in this country. It's called the United States Constitution. That's got you locked in box. And I've never ever heard a black person in America ever address that issue and understand it. They always went off at their mouth giving you misinformation and false information about the United States Constitution. We're going to go into that. But your first issue, and when I say all this, please remember, what I'm saying to you tonight is not about hate. Don't go out and hate any group that I might give you information about. Don't hate anybody. It's not about hating, it's about loving your own people and doing the best you can for them. Okay? Racism is a team sport, as the gentleman said. But if you don't play as a team, you lose by default. All my life, I've been on a team, fighting for black folk. That's why as I'm sitting down, I'll never come to California the day after. This is my last term here. I'm not coming back anymore. I don't pretend that I'm going to come back anymore. This is it, what I'm giving you tonight. Racism is a team sport. You learn to play as a team in California, or you're going down. Just like the blacks did in Florida when the Cuban refugees came in, when I was with President Carter in the White House, the Mariel refugees. They came in, they took over Florida. They took over, they ran blacks out of Overtown, Liberty City, Coconut Grove, dominated. You're going to get wiped out in this state if you don't know how to play this game and understand these issues we're going to talk about tonight. And no superficial stuff. Now we're playing this game, the first thing you must understand is race. What is race? Everybody misuses race and use it for false information. They use it to mislead, to misguide, and to confuse black folk. What is race? Let me explain this to you so you'll never be confused again. Race never existed on this earth until about 1450. Never had race on it. There was no such thing as race. And why did it come about? Because you see, Henry Navigator in about 1450, he brought back about 16 blacks off the coast of Africa and gave them to the Pope in the Vatican, Catholic Church, and he used them as servants. And he used them so effectively as servants. from about 1450 up until about 1488. It got to be a good thing. Then all of a sudden Pope Innocent came out in 1488 and said, hey, we got a good thing going. You don't have to work that much anymore. You can now get unearned benefits by owning certain people. And so what he did then, he said, and it's called a doctrine of unequal exchange. So what he did at that point, they changed the whole concept of race and slavery, because race didn't exist. To be a slave at that point in time, only 3 ways you can be a slave up to that point in time. Don't listen to the Fox channel. The only way you can be a Fox channel, where everybody's been slaves, like Dr. Anderson, every group on earth has been enslaving people for thousands of years. That's a lie. Yes, they enslaved people, but not for the reasons I'm going to be telling you about. They enslaved black folk, enslaved people either out of personal indebtedness, or they enslaved you because you were a prisoner of war, or they enslaved you for religious persecution. They never, and they said, well, when you had races? No, you didn't have races, even that time. What you had ethnic groups, you had religious groups, and you had tribes. You did not have races. Well, when Pope Innocent announced in 1488, say, hey, let's put another factor in here, another thing you can use to get slaves. Rather than waiting for personal indebtedness, prisoner of war, and religion, let's use skin color. And that's where your skin color came into being. It never existed in terms of slaving people. And that stayed at that point. And see, here about 5 years later, here comes Columbus, so-called discovering America. He found his land and went back to Europe and say, hey, this European continent, all the European countries were going down the toilet. France, Germany, Russia, Portugal, Spain, Italy, all of them were going down the toilet. Why? They were suffering from famine, food shortages, criminology, diseases. European society was going down the toilet in the early 1500s. They didn't know what in the world to do. When Columbus came back and said, I found all this free land across the ocean over here, where we can go there and start a whole new society. And they said, and we got land there. You only got about 200,000 Indians there, so-called wilderness people. We can go over there and conquer them, and we can take these people, this new slave group with us. We got to have a good thing going. And so they set up then what's called a doctrine of unequal exchange. Let's use them. Let's use them as much as we can. And see, at that time, in the early 1500s, the primary economy was based on mercantilism. And at that point in time, they said, hey, let's change it from mercantilism to capitalism. Now we got these slaves, we're going to have new land in the United States or in the Americas. And they said, now the capitalism got a very finite definition. Capitalism, in the explanation, is this: owning and controlling the land, the tools, the resources, and the people, and using their labor to get wealth. That's the basis of capitalism. And so they came to America, they started capitalism under the doctrine of unequal exchange. And which means that black slaves were getting nothing. And they came to America. When they got to America, they're going to say, well, we're going to set up a whole new society here, and we're going to use these people to profit from it. And when they got here, the first thing they did was get set a treaty with the American Indians, called the New York Treaty of 1516. And says that we just can't come here even without 200,000 so-called Indians here. We can't enslave these black folk. They might get smart, hook up with these Indians, and they could run us back to Europe. So the whites then Europeans put an inclusion provision in every treaty, telling the Indians, if you help us keep these blacks enslaved and keep us under control, we will reward you. We will give you land, we'll give you clothes, food, weapons, money, and opportunity to go to school and be civilized. And so the 5 major tribes went for it. The Cherokee, Chickasaw, Seminole Indians, and Creek Indians, they all went for it. And so after that, they started calling those 5 major tribes, with all the rest of the tribes, they started calling them civilized tribes. Because now they're going to go to get an education. They said that you have to help us enslave these black folk. And every Indian then got paid. And don't believe this crap about everybody talking about friends with Indians were your friends. Indians were never your darn friends. Indians kept you under control. Indians got paid. South Carolina was the first one to set up a payment system. Every one of runaway black that left the plantation, he was chased down by Indians. Indians got $25 for every slave they brought back to the master. If they couldn't bring him back alive, they got paid $20 for bringing back his scalp with his ears attached. And you read about a lot of blacks why they didn't run away from the plantation. They didn't run away from the damn plantation because whites had told the Indians to get them, torture those Negroes. and bring back the scalps. And blacks were scared to death of leaving the plantation because the Indians were out there waiting for them. And I always see all these movies about somehow Indians were black folk free, and no, they weren't. And then later on, I'm gonna jump ahead for a second. And all those tribes, then, when the Civil War came, all those 5 tribes signed agreements with the South to maintain slavery in this country. They signed a Southern agreement to fight to maintain slavery. That's why after the Civil War ended in 1865, it took another year or so before the Indians would even start. They were holding prisoners too. The Choctaw and Chickasaw were still holding 12,000, 16,000 blacks 2 years after the Civil War ended. And the government had to go in there and make them release, make the Indians release those people, those blacks. And they wrote what's called the 1866 Indian Treaties, which says, and those are very important for you to remember, the 1866 Indian Treaties that were based on some very specific things. They're based on the second Constitution, which I'm gonna get to, which means black people should be treated in all manners as well as similar to what? To so-called American Indians. That they have all the rights and privileges of so-called American Indians. And keep in mind that so-called Indians nowadays are not real Indians. 92% of all the people call themselves Indians are whites passing as Indians. They paid $5, they called $5 in history. They went down to the Dawes Commission in 1896 and got their name and up to about 2024 and paid $5 to get their name put on the Dawes roll so they be classified as Indians, get free benefits. That's why you hear this thing about Warren, what Senator Warren talked about, she has relatives of Indian, she has Indian blood. None of these whites had Indian blood. It was impossible for them to have Indian blood. What they're doing, they're repeating the fact that they got their names put on by their great-great-great-grandparents, put on the Dawes roll to get free benefits. And those Indian treaties are really, the only valid treaty in the country right now should be the 1866 Indian Treaty, which came into existence strictly for blacks. Because when the Indians sided with the South and fought with the South in the Civil War under a black flag problem, which told the Indians, kill any black, don't take any black prisoners. That's why in any of these camps during the Civil War, you'll never see a black prisoner. They kill them and slaughter them as soon as they caught them. When the United States then initiated the 1866 Indian treaties, every other treaty was rendered null and void. Every Indian treaty was rendered null and void. The basis of all treaties for Indians should be based on the 1866 Indian Treaty. But now I've jumped way ahead of myself. Let me go back now. You go back to when they started coming to the United States. When the whites started pouring into the United States, they said, we're gonna build a nation here, a new nation. And they said, and we're gonna build a nation as a new country, a cradle of democracy, and blah, 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 the wonderful things we're gonna do, where everybody can vote, everybody can have equal opportunity. And then the question arose, 1 week before the Philadelphia Convention was signing the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence was signed a little earlier, in about 1776. But in 1789, they met in Philadelphia to approve and ratify the Constitution. They said, we got a problem here. They said, how in the world are we going to enslave all these black people? How are we going to enslave black folk and at the same time write a Constitution that says all people? And so they met for a whole week, pulled the shades, locked the doors, and put guards at the door and said, nobody can come in until we work this out. And finally said, we got to have a scheme because we got a policy of doctrine of unequal exchange. Somebody got to be deprived under the doctrine of unequal exchange. These are official doctrines. And they said, well, what we'll do, they finally said, we got to come out of a way to do this. I tell you what let's do. We write the Constitution. Let's use some broad general terms. When we talk about whites and Europeans coming, we'll use these names. We talk about blacks and slaves, we'll use these names. And that's what they put in the Constitution. In all these years, all my 50 years in government and international trade, I never heard of one black lawyer, one black civil rights leader figure that out yet. And the Constitution says this, we the people, they were not talking about black folk. All the people, they weren't talking about black folk. When they said all the citizens, they're not talking about black folk. When it says all human beings got a God-given right for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. See, that's a lie. They wouldn't say happiness. First it was property. They changed it. Because she said, well, they said, no, I don't want it for property, because see, black folk are going to be defined as property. And so Thomas Jefferson had to write the Constitution twice. to change the word property in the Constitution to happiness. And yet our people never figured it out. Somebody thought white folk were sailing across the Atlantic for 2.5 months, get to the United States so they can find happiness. And what they did is, they went for the sham. So they defined blacks in the Constitution by using other names. In the Constitution, when you read the Constitution, it says, those people, those who indebted, those in bondage, that special species of property. They're talking about you all. But black folk couldn't figure it out. So every time they have a civil rights movement, they talk, we're looking for our rights based on Constitution. But see, the conservatives and the rednecks, they're saying just the opposite. They're saying, we want to go back to the original intent of the Constitution. They know what they're talking about. That's what conservatism means. When you hear Donald Trump talking about, I'm going to put all these conservatives on the court, on the Supreme Court. He's already appointed almost 30 conservative justices to the federal courts to lock and box you all. Because they are conservatives. What does conservatism mean? You understand this. Conservative means that, from the root word to conserve, those who got will get, those who ain't got will never get. Conserve means to hold on what you got and make sure nobody else get anything. That's where conservatism comes from. And yet you hear all these people on TV talking about conservatives. Not one black still gonna say, what in the world would a black person be supporting conservatism for? What has he got to conserve? What is he conserving? Food stamps, welfare, public housing, slavery, Jim Crow, segregation. What is he conserving? You got to run back around. I'm a black conservative, which means here he is running with the damn hound dogs, pretending he's a friend to the rabbit. Wow. And he's a black conservative. And yet, every day on any program, they're talking about conservatism, and not one black will stand and say, hold on a second. No black in his right mind would be interested in conservatism. Because why? Because we go back to the Constitution and say, what was the primary purpose of the Constitution when they ratified it in 1789? The primary purpose of the Constitution was intentionally to maldistribute nearly 100% of all this nation's land, businesses, resources, privileges, incomes, rights, and all controls of government into the hands of the dominant white society. That was the purpose of slavery. And yet, not one black person I know of in the history of the nation has ever come out and say, I don't give a damn about integration and civil rights. Tell me, when are you going to correct the maldistribution that came and took effect in 1789 with everything going into white folks' hands? Nobody talks about that. And they let it slide. So in 1790, 1 year later, then the white folks locked and boxed them. They locked and boxed into what the title of my speech tonight is, into a third rail. They passed the first nationalization and immigration law in 1790 after the Constitution, which says this is a white nation. And anybody coming to this nation must be either white or can pass for white. And so what that did, that set up a rail system. You got European whites coming in on a rail, and anybody who can pass for whites can come in on the second rail. And what does that mean? That means all these groups you all call now as immigrants, they're coming in on the second rail. That's the rail you got. Because why? Because you see, Hispanics were always classified as whites. That's why Spain, that's why it was called New Spain, all the way down from Mexico. And who were the countries then that was coming over here? Those were the people who joined that race in Europe. Now go back to the race. Because at that point in time, when they accept capitalism, everybody wanted to get to America and use black slaves. So all the countries got into a race. A race is a what? A race is a contest. A race is a contest. Quit letting people BS you. A race is a contest where people are what? They're competing for the ownership and control of land, resources, wealth, and power. That's what a race is. So all those European nations tried to get to America so they can get hold of land and resources. They weren't coming here looking for no rights. They weren't coming here looking for no right to vote. They were coming here looking for resources. And so that's when the race began. All the European nations came over here. And the race then used black folk to set up the country's constitution. And then the only people denied to be in the race were black folk. And over the course of 300 years, all the resources in America were maldistributed in a way that became a second rail for immigrants coming into the country. So they began to pour into the country. And we had millions pouring into the country because black folk were shut out. You see, because of the race, black folk didn't get anything under the doctrine of unequal exchange. They got nothing. And so by 1859, right before the Civil War, at that time, black folk were slaves. They owned about that much. You had about 280,000 blacks that were free. They had 1/2 of 1% of anything that was of wealth. They had 1/2 of 1% of the wealth in this nation on the eve of the Civil War, like that. The other 99 and 1/2% belonged to the dominant white society. And when they started giving away land and set the Constitution up to sort of maldistributing all the resources, the first thing George Washington said is, I want 100,000 acres of free land. Thomas Jefferson said, I want 100,000 acres of free land. Patrick Henry says that you're going to give them $100,000 of free land. Not only I want you to give me life or give me death, give me 65,000 acres of free land. So he got 65,000. Every white immigrant come to America was entitled to 650 free acres of land. And they started 12 railroads. They gave the railroads 6 miles of free land on both sides of the rails across America. They picked up 24 million acres of free land. And west of the Mississippi River, where you all are dealing with out here, all these big plantations and fruit planting. And they came out here, and they had that last gold rush in 1880s. They crossed the Mississippi River. They could pick up as much land as they want free as they could in a 24-hour period. And so the Europeans crossing the Mississippi River picked up over 1 million acres of free land in 24 hours. Now, what am I telling you on this now? You see, all the wealth of this nation was into the land. The timber, the gold, the silver, the chrome, the bauxite, the gas, the oil, the minerals is in the soil. That's where it is, the wealth. And see, when black folks start talking about, well, we want 40 acres of mule, they say, under the doctrine of unequal exchange, you get nothing. You will never get the 40 acres of mule, because the doctrine of unequal exchange means we want you to contribute, but you get nothing in return. That's the doctrine of unequal exchange. And they said, therefore, that's going to be the structure. We will own and control 99 and 1/2%. You blacks will have the 1/2. That stayed true up until the early 1803. In 1803, what happened was in the Marlborough-Madison decision, they set up a Supreme Court and jumped into the battle. Now, to understand this, another point, don't forget this, the Supreme Court is the guardian of racism. Their primary sole purpose primarily was to maintain the racial status quo, to make sure nothing changed based on the Constitution. And right now you say, well, what does that mean? It means that when they set up the United States Supreme Court, the first 57 Supreme Court justices were slaveholders, people. And out of the next 6 or 7 they appointed, they were racist whites. So out of 126, you've only had 1.5 blacks out of 126 people on the Supreme Court. And what that tells you, and y'all are missing the point, you cannot get justice so long as the Supreme Court is all white. You go look at right now, what it's telling you, that justice can only be purviewed or given out based on through white eyes. That's why right now you got 5 white men on the Supreme Court and 3 white women and 1/2 a black man. Now, so I want y'all to understand what you're up against now. I'm going through this stuff now. If I scare you, I'm sorry. But that's the way the structure is set. And everybody was saying, they got the courts right now. The Federalist Society is feeding Donald Trump all the negative, worst conservatives in the country to put on the courts to stack so y'all never get into freedom. You're locked in box. Now, before I leave that point and get to the Civil War, understand this, that the southern states that you saw on that map, all those red states, that was a Southern Confederacy. The red states are the same same Confederates that have tried to destroy this country twice before. The southern states tried to tear this country up in 1860 with the Civil War. They tried to tear this country up again in the 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement. They're up again. And you can't beat them. You know why? Because the way they got the structure set up based on race. Because see, they set up they set what's called an electoral college, which gave every state so many people they could appoint. And then what happens now, as a result of that, they can have 2 senators per state, regardless of the population. So if I go out to Dakota, they might have 10,000 whites out of Dakota. I got more blacks in a public housing down in Alabama than they got in the whole state of America and Dakotas. But they got 2 senators that'll vote strictly down the line on their own self-interest for the dominant white society. They're not gonna do anything for you blacks. And so what happens now is that 30% of the population, which means those states now, those red states, they control with 70% of the population. They're only 30% in fact, but in power, they got 70% to outrule you. That's what Donald Trump has been appealing to. That's why he's kicking your butt. That's his base. His base is those scholars with the electoral colleges in those redneck states. And they only got 30% of the representation. I mean, they got 70% of the representation on 30% of the people. So 30% is out dominating and covering the 70%. Now, so I want you to understand that. So first, let me leave race right quick. Now, when somebody starts talking about race, now what they've done to make sure that you all don't understand it, they use that same technique they use in the Constitution on the word race. They broaden it so nobody understands what race is. Now they say that anybody right now in America constitutes a race. If Hispanics are a race, you're racially profiling Hispanics, you're racially profiling Arabs, you're racially profiling women, you're racially profiling Jews. Those people are all whites. Everybody in this country except black people are in the vertical order. But they broaden that term like they did in the Constitution to confuse you so you won't know the difference between race. Race is a competitive relationship between people who are competing for ownership and control of resources and rights. And you can't get it because they got you locked in box. And everybody time you hear it, you want to worry about it. That's racism. And if you black folk push back against it, you got to be a racist. A black person cannot be a racist. It's impossible. Racism is a group phenomenon and it's based on power, economic power. There's no black in America that can tell white folks to do anything. You cannot enslave whites, you can't dictate who can go to school, who can get married. You have no power and economic power. So you cannot be a racist. But they're gonna fool you and trick you by saying if you speak up for your people and push back, you're a racist. All a black person can do in America is to react to white racism. That's all you can do is react. But see, now people can't figure it out. So I don't want to say that, Dr. Anderson, because they think I'm a racist. The next thing I need to get covered. Understand the difference between building your own communities. I got black folks telling me, well, Dr. Anderson, if we build our own communities, we're going backwards. We're going to resegregate ourselves, or we're going to integrate. The issue should never be integration versus segregation. The issue should always be aggregation. See, they never ask whites, Asians, Arabs, Hispanics, do you want integration or segregation? They only ask black folk that. You know why? Our people are silly enough to try to answer. Well, you know, I want integration. I don't want no segregation anymore. Lordy, lordy, you know. They don't ask anybody that but black folk. Our people go for it. No, I don't want to go backwards. And so when you ask them to do the civil rights movement, I was telling Martin Luther and the rest of that group, you're going the wrong way. Why are you trying to push for civil rights? Well, that's in our Constitution. It's wrong. Now let me hit that point for you. Let's jump up from 1803 with the Supreme Court up to 1857 with the Supreme Court. A black man went to the Supreme Court in 1857 called Dred Scott. He went there because he thought he was free, because he had moved from from Missouri up to Illinois. He thought he was free. He went to the Supreme Court. That's for his freedom. Taney's court, Supreme Court's rule, no black man has any rights that a white man is bound to respect. And that set the tone for the civil rights movement to come in. So when the Civil War started, we had about a few radical Republicans that says, hey, we got to protect these black folks since they've been on a doctrine of unequal exchange. For all these 360 years, they've been on a doctrine of unequal exchange, which means take everything you can get from them and leave them with nothing. And what the radical Republicans said in the House, it says, as Benjamin, I can't remember all their names now, I'll get to 2 or 3. Anyway, they sat on the floor and says, that black people in America can only be two things. They're going to be free or they're going to be slaves. Minimum to be free, they must have 40 acres and a mule and $100. And guess what? Andrew Johnson came in after the assassination of Lincoln and said, no, don't give them a damn thing. We are under a doctrine of unequal change. They didn't get them nothing because the South is going to need these blacks again to use as a cheap labor in the South. Because we're going to give back all the land that was taken over during the Civil War to the whites in the South. They can get all their plantations back in land. So now they're going to still need some labor. If we can't use slave labor, let's use cheap labor. And so the doctrine of unequal change was used again. The North agreed with the South to take over blacks and re-enslave them. Your Northern liberals went with the Southern conservatives and agreed that you all can be re-enslaved in the South under what they call Jim Crow segregation and peonage laws. The North didn't care because see, there's very little difference between a conservative and a liberal. The liberal will try to make you feel good while your boat is sinking. But they're not going to do anything to save you. That's why this whole movement about political correctness and this women issues, Me Too, that's a liberal philosophy. And so, so in 1860, when the Civil War ended, they passed laws that are very important for you. They passed a new constitution to try to correct that first constitution in 1789. They passed, the first one was called the 13th Amendment. Now, this is critically important for you. The 13th Amendment was applicable only to black people. Because see, everybody in the country for 306 years already had their freedoms. They already had everything. They didn't need a 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment went strictly for blacks. I cannot find two blacks in America who understand that. and that's why the law says in the 13th Amendment that it is mandated that the government use all necessary means to make sure that black folk are treated in all manners similar to a white person. That's what it said, the 13th Amendment. The way I just said it, it meant that if you're to be treated in all manners similar to, that means they already had what they got. They already had theirs, so why would you go back and let them use the 13th Amendment? Now, well, here comes the 14th Amendment. They passed the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment said every level of government must also exercise all necessary measures to lift the badges and the incidents of slavery off the shoulders of black folk. That's the 14th Amendment. That was written strictly for black people. That's why in the slaughterhouse case in 1872, they explained it again and said that the 14th Amendment is strictly for black folk. Now here you are right here fighting a damn battle about immigrants coming in here. None of you raised hell about it. That's your amendment. They come in claiming the 14th Amendment, that they got rights to come in as citizens. And it says that all blacks will be citizens. It was written for black people. It wasn't written for immigrants. Immigrants got their rights back in 1790. No blacks raising a cane. None of them say, hold it a minute. You're taking away provisions that are put in place for black folk. And then the black folk also at the same time got the benefits of what they call the first civil rights law. The first civil rights law was trying to correct the Dred Scott decision. It says black people have no rights. And it said that, and it said black, so what the Justice and the Supreme Court said, not Supreme Court, but the Congressman said, is that black folk must be given something that's special. And black folk must have some resources. They must have at least 40 acres, a mule, and $100. That was what it was spelled out for black people. And yet now what happened on that? The Supreme Court jumped into that and said, no, that civil rights law has to be for everybody. Because we let it be strictly for blacks, blacks can get some benefits. And so what they did, the United States Supreme Court intentionally gutted the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the civil rights laws to give the impression that it was for all people. Those laws were written strictly for you to get the benefits you're entitled to. But you were wiped out again by the doctrine of unequal exchange. And when the civil rights movement came later on in the 1960s, what the civil rights people should have been focusing on is going back and correcting the purpose of slavery. Now, but they didn't do it. So what I'm saying to you now is that nothing has happened to black folk in this country by accident. Everything that's happened to you was intentionally. Nothing's happened to you by accident. You have never been any more nor any less what the dominant white society wanted you to be. When you go out in all these programs you're getting introduced to in these institutions, they again use those same codes that were in the Constitution. Those very broad, ambiguous terms. They sneak it on you. You get it, it's like getting a shot. You can't feel it anymore. They give you a sugar pill. Some of those terms now are no longer those people, those indebted, those in bondage. It says minorities, poor people, people of color, diversity. All those schemes are to neutralize you and make sure you get no benefits. So that any benefits coming down, what they'll tell you is that it has to be encased inside those very broad and biggest terms, and you haven't got enough power to be able to get anything out of it. That's why when Ronald Reagan came in office in 1982, the first thing he did was invite Halterman off his staff into the White House office. Reagan said to Halterman, and I was just leaving the White House then with President Carter. He says, when you start talking about issues about black folk, never say anything in public that's negative about black folk, point one. But what you do, if you're going to put out any kind of a public program, you must use very broad, ambiguous terms. So use very broad, ambiguous terms, and the jigs, G-I-G, the jigs will never know the difference. They'll never know that there's not going to be a damn thing in it for them. And so therefore, you got wiped out by presidentials. That's why not one single president in the history of this nation, there's not one white candidate has ever run for an office. None one white political party has ever made anything specifically and promised to black folk and delivered. The Republican Party, the radical Republicans, did something in 1866 to 1876 for 10 years called Reconstruction. Then that got wiped out. You have no friends and no allies in politics and social economics. You have no friends and allies. You got to come together and play as a team. That's the bottom line of it, or you're through. And your time is running out. And right now, nobody's going to stand up for you, okay? And quit trying to rely, and don't expect anybody in the black overclass to look out for you. Now, the black overclass is made up of about 6 different elements. It's made up of most of your preachers, your scholars in the universities. It's made up for your civil rights leaders. It's made up for your comedians, your singers and dancers and actors. Those groups are in a safe category. They have been certified as 100% safe. You really want to get ahead, I'm going to tell you one of the best ways to get ahead. All you got to do is go into that safe category that's set up for you. It's called entertainment. If you can entertain whites, you're safe. Now that started on the slave ships. And it carried off into the plantations, where blacks were singing and dancing on the slave ships. So they got to the plantation every Saturday night. The white slave owner would invite the slaves to come around the mansion, around the plantation. Give them lemonade and iced tea. And let them sing and dance. They could play the fiddlers, play the bongos, beat on the drum, clap their hands and feet, dance and sing. Or they can get into athletics. They could have headbutting contests, horseshoe pitching contests, marble shooting contests, wrestling contests. Or they said do anything to be clowns and entertain whites. So that was a safe category. So right now, if you look around and find out for the last 100 years, that even more than that now, about 120 or 30 years, that any successful black in America was in the category of being an entertainer. And when white folks want to know what's going on, they would call those individuals and put them up to speak for you all. And say, well, you know, Dr. Anderson, we're going to be lynching and castrating some black folk tomorrow. Why don't you call one of those black comedians? That's what they think about it. So they go call one of the blacks and say, you're a comic. Tell us, what do you think about killing, slaughtering black folk? See, because they picked the non-educational black in a sense they know they're not going to violate the code of identifying with or doing anything for black folk. That's why you find them, they want to do something for black folk. They're not going to do it in the United States. They say, well, I'm helping black folk. I'm going to South Africa to set up a school for girls in South Africa. And I would say, why don't you set up a school for blacks in St. Louis and Chicago and Philadelphia? You see, and so now let me get a couple more points and I'm gonna give it up on you. So what they do now, I had a couple things. They use black folk. They use you to carry water for every other group. Because why? Because the slavery not only stripped you of resources, it also stripped you of one thing that was very precious. It stripped you of your self-identity. It stripped your ability to have social cohesiveness. And by lynching black folk, then they instilled a code of conduct that made you fearful. And you lost your identity, lost your purpose on the earth. Now the same identical thing happened in Korea. Now in Korea, we had over 7,000 prisoners that were captured by the North Koreans and put in POW camps. And they were there for 3 years. We had over 7,000 that were in POW camps in North Korea and in China. But after 3 years, guess what? Out of 7,000 of our prisoners, over 3,000 died in prison. 3,000 died in prison in North Korea and China during the Korean War. But they didn't die for physical reasons. You know what they died from? Mental reasons. Give up idols, momism. They just surrendered. They lost faith. And they forgot what they were in Korea for. And so at night, a lot of us pull their blankets over their head, sit there and just put their head up and just die for no apparent reason. They lost the will to live. And a lot of our people right now in America, black in America, and that's why I don't want your students to get caught in that. They've lost the will to be black, to fight for their people and stand up. And they would not take and protect their own people. And they suffered. And then in a given day, every morning, the Chinese and Koreans come over the hill. I was in Kimpo Valley, 50 miles north of Korea. They come run over the hill blowing their horns. And they're going to make it, we're going to kill you when we get there. And instead of our soldiers being prepared for that, that's why I want you all to be prepared, to fight, stand up, push back. Not try to hurt somebody, but remember these things I'm teaching and telling you now. And so when I go out, you go out in the morning, and a lot of our soldiers, instead of being ready to prepare to fight, you find a lot of them laying in the ditch on top of their gun, not shooting back, just laying on top of their gun. You go up and say, why don't you get, they're shooting at you, why don't you get up? They say, well, Dr. Adams, you know, if I get up and shoot back, that might make them angry. Now, you have never heard that kind of stupidity in your life. They lost the reality of where they were. And right now, black folk don't understand that initiating slavery against black folk was a declaration of war. Indirectly, you're at war, trying to survive. It's just like our soldiers, they just gave up and just died. And so you go around and ask a lot of these black ministers and black civil rights leaders and black entertainers, why don't you stand up for black folk and fight? Why don't you connect up the resource you got and try to help them build businesses and build institutions and rebuild communities? All they got are neighborhoods now. Why don't you help them? Well, Dr. Hanson, if we did that, I might lose my ability to make money off get my picture on a Cheerio box or something. And so they gave up. So a lot about most of your black entertainers and your black athletes, they've given up on black folk. They've surrendered they surrendered to the effects of white racism. And so in conclusion, what I'm telling you is that all these people coming to America, they're immigrants. Immigrants coming to America, they're coming here looking for what they call the American dream. The American dream, they go to America and get unearned benefits that should have gone to black folk. And I haven't heard one black person stand up and ask, what's the American dream? The American dream was based on two things: getting free Indian land and free black labor. That's the American dream. And coming to America and get unearned benefits. And now all the immigrants coming to this country are still coming here to get benefits that you can't get. And yet you got your civil rights leaders down on the board and saying, y'all come on, y'all come on. Instead of saying this, and here's what I'm going to say to you. Black people must be put into a protected class. You must start demanding that black folk be, if you're going to keep bringing in immigrants in this country, you must go to every legislator, get on every TV set and radio and say, we're going to demand that the third law of motion, that black folk be protected against immigrants coming to this country. The only people that's negatively impacted by immigrants are black folk. That's why right now in America, the country nobody tells you, black folk are not progressing. You're not progressing. You're in the same position you were in 1860. Nobody tells you right now that 38% of all black folk in America are beneath the poverty line. They don't tell you, they keep telling you about the unemployment rate being 3 or 4%. That's a lie. The unemployment rate nationally for black folk in 2006 was 35%. And it was 48% in Baltimore, 48% in Detroit, 49% in Pittsburgh, 51% in New York, 87% for black youth. They're lying to you. See, what they tell you, they don't tell you that black folk unemployment is structural. Most of our blacks are giving up looking for jobs. And that's the problem. And they don't tell you that that's our biggest problem. We keep majoring in the minors instead of saying, no, you're not talking about black folk. They don't tell you that in this country that 35% of all the black children are beneath the poverty line. They don't tell you that in terms of wealth, that black folk only own 1/2 or 1% of the wealth in this nation. You cannot compete from Boston to San Diego, only 1/2 or 1%. Don't waste your damn time unless you're gonna start getting some money. The biggest power in this country is economic power. That's money power, that's it. Not voting. Voting ain't worth a quarter. I'm telling you, I shouldn't say that because I ran through that campaign. Vote is only important if somebody has promised you something and they understand the nature of politics. Politics is a very simple premise. Remember this, politics came into existence as you know it today in the 1500s. What was politics? policy was based on a very simple premise. It's called quid pro quo, something for something. One hand washes the other. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. You wash my hand, I wash yours. I put you in an elected office, you owe me. And see, everybody makes promises to deliver something to anybody except black folk. Black folk never demand anything from your politicians. You don't demand a damn thing, that's exactly what you get, nothing. You don't ever demand. All you want to do is say, well, Dr. Anderson, I got told by our great leaders that we need to go vote to exercise our right. You don't go to the polls to exercise a damn thing. If you want to exercise, you go take out a membership in the damn gym. You go to vote to get benefits, get resources. This is what Dr. Anderson, I disagree because a lot of blacks gave up their lives for the right to vote. No black gave up his life to vote. He might have had his life taken from him, but he didn't give it up. You're supposed to go there saying, I'm not going to vote on the power of non-expressive. I'm not going to vote for anything, anybody, any candidate, any political party, unless they commit and tell me specifically and solely what you're going to do for black folk. Don't tell me about what you're going to do for minorities and poor folk and women and gays and humpbacks and bitches and people that didn't go on toenails and hemorrhoids. You tell me, I don't want to hear that crap anymore. I don't want to say that. Those days are over with black folk in this country. And I'm getting ready to try to initiate an US movement starting the first of the year, called Us Too. Us Too, those are blacks who have been abandoned, obsolete, and put into a third rail system. Now what is a third rail system? If you watch that system I told you between European whites and immigrants, that's a double rail. We got that and when you talk about an L, a subway system. But off to the right there's another rail called a third rail. The third rail is where the power is. They keep that covered up because you know what, and they're scared to touch it. And so, that's in America, black folk are the third rail. They want to keep you all covered up. That's why they would never mention you in a discussion. Nobody's going to bring you up and talk about policies. They're going to start talking much about it by benefits. They're going to start, if you start talking about affirmative action, you start talking about reparations, you are a power source that's dangerous to them. You are the third rail in America. And nobody wants to touch it. Even the blacks are scared of it. Your third rail, and see, black folk were the engines that drove this economic development in this country. You are special people. You are exceptional people. But you never live up to it. You're scared to be exceptional. Now a lot of you, for instance, I know a lot of you don't want to be called yourself black. I know that, and I know, and my friend, he was absolutely right to call yourself original people. You are the original people, the first people on earth, and I don't disagree with it. But you got to be very careful, because you see, this country owes you. And you got to watch this label. The label that was help you, save you in politics is blackness. Why? Because see, blackness is not only a skin color. Blackness is a sense of commitment. Blackness is an experience. Black is a historical treatment. Blackness are your badge of honor. And more importantly, your blackness is indebtedness that this country have to you. This country does not have a debt to original people. They don't have a debt to any other people coming into this country. They have a debt to you. Okay? I mean that even when I mention the word, like I head up trade missions to Africa, I had 2 or 3 programs to haul in seafoods and stuff into Africa. And say, I love Africa, but I don't want blacks just to call themselves African Americans. Why? Because you got to learn how to play this game. You don't do it right. Play the damn game. You make me angry about that. You cannot be an African American in America. Nobody every human being coming to America is an African American. Everybody says all the human beings migrated out of Africa. Everybody coming to America is an African American. And so consequently, you're not talking about black folk. You get into an ambiguous, broad term again. But see, nobody, and that's why one Palestinian just went to Washington, D.C. on the University of Illinois, University of Maryland. He wanted to get into the Banneker Scholarship, because it was set up for African Americans. And they denied him the money. He went to the court and sued and won $150,000. He said, I am an African American. Yes, I'm a Pakistani, but I lived in Africa for a while before I came here, so I'm an African American. Now, so I keep telling black folk that the thing that white folk will not steal from you is your blackness. See, they won't steal blackness, they're scared of blackness. They won't steal, they'll steal anything from you to water down the special debtness and liability this country has to black folk. But see, if you say you're an African American, that won't work. I got Caribbean blacks coming in, I got blacks from Africa coming here, and I got blacks coming from Africa. They think they're better than blacks in America. So the term I use is say, no, you ain't no better than blacks in America. I got native blacks in America that are special people. And he said, what do you mean by special? I said, they're the only people in this country that was treated and maltreated. They're the only people that are drug into this country, whipped and beaten and castrated and lynched. They're the only people that denied our humanity. They're the only people that denied the right to have the fruits of their labor. They're the only people that denied the right to vote. They're the only people that denied the right to be in government. They're the only people that denied the right to have an education. They're the only people that denied the right to have a religion. They're the only people that denied to have a family that wasn't broken. They're the oldest people in the nation. They're the only people in this nation that's fought in every war that this country had in the history. They're the only people. No other group can make that declaration. They say that they are equal to black folk. You're the oldest. You're the most patriotic people in the country. Why'd you claim you're not African American? You're black people. And I for labor say you're native black people. So that when and get that money for the native blacks, then you support everything you can in Africa. I love Africa and taking trade missions there. But if I use the word African American, I'm telling you, in my years in politics, the governor, the president, you do that, you're stepping your own foot. You can't do that. Because this country tell you right quick, we don't know Africa a damn thing. And what these rednecks will say is that, yeah, as a matter of fact, yeah, we had African chiefs that sent y'all over here. And so, how you gonna hold us responsible for your chiefs? You see what I'm saying to y'all? It's what you say, yeah, we might have some silly ones over there, but I'm talking about these native blacks. They've been here. 99% of all the blacks in America. 99% of all the blacks in America were here before 99% of all the other people arrived. And quit letting people tell you, what Dr. Anderson, if black folk don't like it, you just need to go back to Africa. No. The rule is those who come last go first. You take your ass back first. I'm tired and I'm sick and tired of black folk not learning how to play this game. You play by coming up with your own group self-interest and start playing a game that puts your interest before anybody else's. Quit going out and joining marches trying to help everybody else. Nobody's coming here to get along with you. All these groups coming to America are competing with you. That's why all these major cities are going to be gentrified and privatized out of all the resources. In these big cities, Detroit, Philadelphia, all of them are going to the white hands under gentrification and privatization of all the resources. You're going to be left holding the bag. So you got to go back and try to get out of immigration and quit just building neighborhoods. A neighborhood is useless. And quit telling people you got a community. You don't have not one single community in America. All you got are neighborhoods. A neighborhood is like a bucket with a hole in it. It has no value. You put water in it and it runs out. A community is where you store your culture, your history, your values, your protection, your businesses, your tax base, your wealth, and your heritage. You store everything in your community. That's why everybody in America got community except us. We have not got one black community in America. I come out right now and I get in the car. I get in America and be chauffeured around. I can find a French town, not this, the West Coast. I can find a Japan town, a Chinatown, a little Korea, Saigon town, little Cambodia, something. Mexican town. I can go across America and find Greek town, Pole town, Hopper town, little Italy's, little Cuba, little Havanas. I can find everything but a damn black town. Now, what is a community? A community, you must have three things in it. You must have a wholly independent economic structure. You must have a code of conduct that teaches you support, buy from you, and protect your own people. And you must have elect politicians that will fight for you first and foremost. You get these water-leg blacks you put in office. As soon as he gets elected, the first thing I'll tell you, black folk put me in office, but I represent all the people. Y'all need to snatch a knot in his butt right when he says that. You live in a nation of representative government. You're supposed to represent the people that put you in office. When you go into office, first thing they do is make you put your hand on the Bible, saying, I hereby swear and promise that I will protect and serve those who put me in this office. Yeah, but you let them get away with it. You let them get away with it, and they start all these different movements. They have marches, and these symbolic issues. You shoot a black person, we have a march. You run over a black person with a truck, we get a march. You've been marching for 150 years, haven't moved an inch. No more damn marches. What you do now is get you a caravan, just like these Hispanics. You started going from city to city, demanding rights and resources. And say, we're not going for the okie doke anymore. You're not progressing, you're going down. You're being set up, just like the Jews were in Hitler in 1933 in Germany. And when Hitler took over as the Vice Chancellor's office, von Braun, he said the same thing. Donald Trump is carrying out the same thing that Hitler was carrying out. And what you should be saying is that what's going to happen? The Jews got exterminated. However, the last people they exterminated were the Jews who were entertainers. They save the Jewish entertainers for last. Your entertainers now are going to be saved for last. Because they save the Jewish entertainers so they, in the concentration camps and the extermination camps, they would let them sing and dance and play music and tell jokes. So, and to cover up what? The screams and the howls of those black folk who were being executed, burned alive, and gassed in the furnaces. And that's why they use your entertainers. Go look at any TV show. You're going to find all number of black entertainers on there. Some of them might have 4 or 5 different TV shows. And the book put out by Neil Goldhagen called Hitler's Willing Execution. See, if you see these kind of things occurring, you're being set up. When all of a sudden he says, anytime your people are an outgroup, and we are an outgroup, we are the official underclass. And underclass means those individuals, by the mere nature of their social economic conditions, they are predestined to live either as beggars or criminals for the rest of their existence. You're being set up as an underclass. And the last point is that's why right now, you should be asking the question, why is it now everybody's talking about gun control? Gun control came into existence. For what? It came into existence to make sure that whites are protected from black slave revolts. That's why it's the Second Amendment in the Constitution. When it went into the Constitution, but nobody talks about this, you have not heard not one single black mouth say this yet about why the Second Amendment, why whites are so dedicated to the Second Amendment. You've got about 367 million rifles and handguns in America. They're all 99.5% in the hands of whites. They own all the weapons, they make all the weapons, the tools, the bullets, the guns. They got all the gun shops, the store shops. They got all the rifle ranges. They own all the weapons. And why are they so hung on the gun control laws and against them and want to maintain it rather? Is because they someplace fear that sometime you blacks might rise up and try to have a slave revolt, not a post-slave revolt, a black revolt. And they try to stay in preparation for you. That's what they're not holding on those guns talking about they want to go hunting or go for record shooting at targets. They're anticipating you're having a major race riot in America. And you don't have the weapon and tools. And even if you did, you're not see, one of the biggest things you can do if you want to stop, you're going to get whites to give up the guns, just tell them all of a sudden, you say, hey, instead of black folk being against gun control, we black folk, we're going to start being for and against gun control. So that every black in America, we got 44 million blacks, we want every black person, all 44 million, own these 10 guns. Come on. When you do that, you flip the switch. And see, all of a sudden they say, well, good God, me tell those Negroes gonna have 44 million, each gonna have 10 guns? That's Jesus Christ. And those who are, and since they're a minority, they said not only they want 10 guns each, they want machine guns and submachines. And some of them even want bombs, so they can go walk around with those, protect themselves, because they're a minority, they're a permanent minority. See, if you start to flip the switch, then people start getting wise. But until you do that, right now they're gonna do what was set up initially in South Carolina. The first gun control law went into South Carolina. They were called plantation police. They got badges, and later on they became what they call patty rollers. Their primary responsibility was to go out and monitor the roads, make sure no blacks were on the roads or escaping from a plantation without credentials and a license to be on the road. And that was the whole purpose of the patty roller. And then every white male in the 1800s, they set up what's called militias. Nowadays you call them National Guards. And every white male between 18 and 45 had to carry a weapon and be prepared to defend the white society against blacks and to defend white businesses. That's the purpose of the Second Amendment. That's what the gun control issue is about. But nobody's gonna tell you the things I've told you tonight. They're scared to do it. They're scared to do it as I told you about in career. They're scared to shoot back and push back. And the only way you're gonna solve these racial problems in America, you gotta start pushing back. And remember, as I said, you are special people. And quit letting people think you're a guest. You are not guests. Black folk are not guests in America. You walk on sacred ground, paid for by the blood and sweat and tears of millions of black cotton pickers and janitors, cooks and butlers and waiters. You walk on sacred ground. Nobody can tell you this kind of ground. And that's what my book's about. You're the most special people in this nation. And I said this too, but now people say, well, Dr. Elson, is that about race? I said, no. See, my granddad was white, so I ain't got no problem with that. He married a black woman, in Indian Odessa. So I came from both sides, so I can tell people what the truth is. I don't know what I mean to tell y'all. But they're gonna kick your butt unless you know how to play these games. And quit talking about the symptoms. See, every time a black come out with a program, well, doctor, we gotta do something about food stamps, welfare, public housing. We gotta do something about more public housing. We gotta do something about more jobs. Quit trying to Get people to give you jobs. Build your damn businesses and produce your own damn jobs. White people don't want you to come into their neighborhoods and give you a job. They get jobs, they build them for themselves. That's why the Asians told me, so Dr. Anderson, we ain't never gonna hire no black folk. Because we don't want you at our restaurant. You're gonna find no black or Chinese restaurant. We make jobs for our own people. You say your people, the only people who around always want to beg somebody to give you a damn job. Quit doing it. It's an embarrassment to me after 50, 60 years. I just can't take it anymore. Stand up and say, I'm special. And say, Dr. Anderson said, I'm a native black. My back and my sweat built this damn country. We are special, and I want to be recognized, appreciated, and reparated for being the blackest people and the people that were the engines that drove the economic development of this country, and put your interest first before anybody else's interest. Don't be against anybody, and if you guys and understand what racism is. Racism is a competitive relationship, and these young black people think that somehow racism has to do with who you love and what you not. I said, Dr. we don't have racism anymore. I got white girlfriends and this and that. They don't even know what racism is. And they said also racism is not liking somebody or not doing that. That's not racism. Last point. It goes up a step. Every human being on earth must be able to what? Discriminate, be prejudiced, and be biased, and exercise some bigotry. That is a natural phenomenon. Everybody can do that. You cannot exist, you can't make decisions, you can't have proper judgment if you don't use those means. But neither one of those things have a damn thing to do with racism. Y'all understand what I'm saying to you? I can go into a family right now at the lowest level, it goes up. I can go to the lowest level, which is bias. You go on right now and have a family with 9 kids in the family. Now, that mother and that father will be biased towards 1 or 2 of those kids. Y'all understand what I'm saying? They're gonna say, I got 5 or 10 kids, but I'm biased towards this one. That's not racism. You go up to the next level and start talking about discriminating. They said, I got 9 or 10 kids, but this one, this little small one here, I'm gonna discriminate in that one's favor. I'm gonna make sure that one gets to college because they got a good brain, and they're good at this and that. I'm gonna discriminate and pick, this one, this. And then the last step up, you're gonna say, now I'm prejudiced against all my kids. That's not racism. Racism is a competitive relationship based on owning, controlling resources, wealth, and power, and using it to subordinate, exclude, and exploit another weaker group that you've already practiced a doctrine of unequal exchange on for over 460 years. And I love all of you, and I quit. See what a sick man do? He come all the way out here to just raise Cain with you all. So forgive me if I hurt your feelings. One last thing, please, one last point. Now, Dr. Rosie Milgram has my last book, which is rated a 5-star now, the best book in America, selling around the world. It's called A Black History Reader. 101 questions that you never thought to ask. You got to answer most of the questions you want to know about all these issues in history and stuff. Now, there's an old rule that says that a black man always carries a knife. Okay? I'm telling y'all right now, I carry my knife, and anybody I see out in the hallway in a few minutes that doesn't have one of those Black History Reader books, I'm going to cut you.
I think he's serious.
I'm serious.
Thank you again, Dr. Anderson, and thank you all again for coming to the 39th Annual Black Consciousness Conference. We really hope you enjoyed the program, and we hope that you at least took away at least some piece of it and use that again to continue to empower yourselves, and that way that could translate into us empowering each other in our community. Before you all do go, we do have dinner that's in the back of this room. So we're gonna have you all file out this way, come up this hallway, and then you'll come in through the doors on the other side. And we're serving Jamaican food. If you came to our dinner last night,